The Mental Health Recovery Services Board Executive and Nominating Order.
Aaron Gordon.
Present.
Mr. Arnold.
I'm here.
Ms. Banks. Here. Ms. Bell. Here. Mr. Brown.
Here.
Ms. Clark. Ms. Friedman.
Here.
Ms. Harding. Here. Ms. Rodriguez. Major White. Here.
Thank you very much. Recognition of visitors. Executive and Nominating Committee meeting minutes from April the 8th. Motion to approve. So moved.
Second.
Questions? Favor?
Aye.
Aye. Against? Abstain. All right.
Okay, let me draw your attention to page 3. We're looking at the FY 26-27 officer and committee leadership nominations. As you recall, in January 25, we talked about preparing a list of nominations. It was recommended that the current chair, Reverend Otis Gordon, and the vice chair, Ms. Nima Bell, form the committee to identify potential candidates. That has occurred, and the process is presenting the candidates for nomination here today, and if that's approved, then we will take that to the full board for approval. But the FY 26 nominations for officers and committee chairs include Chair Nima Bell, Vice Chair Christina Rodriguez, Treasurer Linda Howe, Secretary Melissa Clark, Planning and Oversight Committee Chair Calvin Brown, Vice Chair Major Tricia White.
Slate. Are there any nominations from the floor? Seeing that, the motion is in the middle of the page.
You can take both those together.
We're gonna take them both together.
Yes.
Okay, great. So moved.
Second.
All right, moved and second. Any questions? Those in favor?
Aye.
Against? And those abstaining? Motion passes.
So we just keep going? All righty. All right, so it's not even the beginning of the fiscal year, and we already have a request for an increase in fiscal year 26.
Oh, wow.
Administrative budget. So if you recall, back when we were talking about our revised table of organization in 24, we had a fairly robust discussion about succession planning, and in particular, a few positions that we didn't have a plan for, and one of those positions is the manager of claims and benefits. Well, that position is currently occupied by Miss Michelle Glanville. There's a good chance that you may have seen her, but you might not have ever met her, given that she works largely independent and works in the background. She has been in her position since June of 1998. She is the longest tenured board staff member. There's two that are pretty close to each other. And she has mostly, like I said, worked independent. We do not internally have a working knowledge of her activities related to claims and benefits. Her position has also recently changed as we moved from GOSH to Smart Care. And so we have a couple of different things going on. She has said she intends to retire by the end of the year. We are currently working out an initial plan to get some just high-level cross-training with an existing staff member right now. She's also working on a manual that describes how she goes about her duties. However, those are good first steps, but the reality is that won't do what we need, just the knowledge transfer to accomplish. So what we're proposing is that we add a temporary position to the table of organization so that there is an overlapping tenure between Ms. Glanville and whoever this new person would be to occupy the position. The position is what we're calling Assistant Manager of Claims and Benefits. The temporary position would be from October 1st through December 31st. The cost of doing that, before I say the cost of doing that, at a salary range of $45,600 to $68,400, which is the current range of the Manager of Claims and Benefits position. The cost of doing that would be $26,000 in total, $21,200 for salary and wages, $4,800 for all the ancillary expenses. Naturally, some of those ancillary expenses would also carry over into the full-time job. It's anticipated that that person who would occupy the assistant manager position would be essentially the manager in training upon her retirement, Michelle's retirement, assuming adequate performance for the position. This plan has been vetted by the county human resources as well. They assure me that we can do this without any issues. It's fairly common for us to do something like this. And so if you are so inclined to allow and approve that, there's three things that we need to do. The first is to amend the table of organization for the temporary position for the period of time, October 1st, 2025 through December 31st, 2025. The second is to approve the salary range of $45,600 to $68,400, which is a pay grade 40. And then the third is to allocate the funds to the fiscal year 26 administrative budget. I will stop there and happy to answer any questions.
So of course, this amount is not significantly impacted by it.
No, it does not significantly impact the budget.
Is that enough time? I mean, 3 months,
It's probably practical. It will take us 3 months just to get somebody.
okay, got it, all right.
By the time we have,
Yeah, I just know like,
if we added
trying
by
to
the,
transfer that kind of knowledge sometimes does take longer than you expect. I was making sure you guys have enough time if you need it, but that makes sense, 3 months.
If you start the search now and you find the person in the next 2 weeks by some miracle or whatever, would they be able to sit tight till October?
I don't know that question, or I don't know that answer.
Right, I mean, it's theoretical, I guess I'm making a statement. If
The-
we found somebody prior to October 1st.
At 3 months of advertising and onboarding, I'll just say for our positions that we've had vacant, we've not been able to accomplish that.
Okay,
I haven't been able to accomplish that in 3
got
months.
it, all right.
That would be a good problem to have if somebody said, hey, can we get on sooner? Now, that might allow us to come back to you in August or so and say, okay, we got this great candidate, let's figure that out. Or we do have some discretion within the administrative budget to change things around, although we don't like to do that this early in the fiscal year because then that hamstrings everything going forward. So, Lisa, it looked like you had a question.
Yeah, so, okay, so then if she retires in December, do you think that she would be willing, this is just hypothetical, then after next year, if she'd be willing maybe to contract, you know, so she can continue the person that you're bringing on, you know, their knowledge, their
So-
training or something?
I will say, I can't answer your question directly, but what I can say is, she has been extremely cooperative in the transition planning process, and has been open to a number of different items. What we don't typically do rehire here. It's been frowned upon out of this board for some time now. And that's what you're saying, and I don't know all the implications, but it messes with your purse pretty good. So, you know, we would have to cross that bridge when we. The
I was
good
thinking like
news,
that, because I think, well, I don't know, like maybe like 12 hours a week or something just for that initial, I don't know, I was just thinking.
So, I know that it messes with
Messes with
purse
that,
and especially if you're pulling somebody back into the existing position.
Theoretically, that person needs to be off the public payroll of any sort for X amount of time in order to make sure that PERS
Oh, so it kicks in.
is continuity.
And when I got here in 10, we had a little situation that got really sticky.
I remember
Yeah. Frankly, we would just like to avoid that altogether.
Okay,
But one of the other things that just so we're aware is the opportunity to identify somebody with the skill set is greater now that we've made the transition to smart care. Gosh was very specific. Smart care opens up that a little bit more. So,
We're just looking out for the organization as a whole
Right.
to say, hey, listen, you know, but if that's not an option, then
like at this time, you know, if you wanted to amend that motion, we could. I just don't know if it's necessary right now. I can always come back to you.
Yeah.
We're
I
gonna have to have a meeting in August, for the executive committee in August anyway.
okay, sounds good. Cool. So moved.
All right.
I see that position would be supervised during that interim period by the senior manager of technology system. Why?
That is the current supervisor of the manager of claims and benefits.
I'm sorry.
Second point would be with the temporary position, when the person is appointed to that position, would that assistant manager then come off of your TO?
Absolutely, that's why we're putting it in a time frame of October 1 to December 31st. That's it. So it automatically, I won't have to come back to
Day
you.
one, it would be
Right.
abolished.
Right. Yes.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear a second.
There was not a second yet.
Second.
All right, any other? Okay, those in favor?
Aye.
Those against? Those abstaining? And motion carries. Next, we'll go to the trustee mention.
Okay, if you recall, during my evaluation process, there were a couple of deliverables that you'd like to see. The first was a skills inventory. The second was increased information related to advocacy. And the third was a development of a trustee mentorship program. The mentorship program design has been completed and is presented to you today for information only, and any of your feedback, would be appreciated. So what we're hoping to do is create a mentorship program that will enhance the trustees' onboarding experience, reduce new trustee learning curves, strengthen board cohesion and engagement, increase trustee confidence in decision-making, and support better governance and oversight of the board activities. Mentorship would be voluntary. I'm suggesting a 6-month participation commitment with the opportunity to do informal mentorship after the 6th month. The criteria for being a mentor is identified there. Minimum 2 years, demonstrated understanding of the board policies, strong commitment to the organizational mission, which you all do, and then willingness to provide time and guidance to new trustees. The assignment process is a little fluid. We would try and match people's interests using the skills inventory, or perhaps we would talk to the potential mentee and say, is there somebody that you would like to
That you know on the
considered?
board already.
Right.
All that, yeah. Connections.
Talked about duration, and then the components. There would be a welcoming session, one-on-one meetings, then the real mentoring happens in a one-on-one monthly check-ins. I need to stress that this is not a staff-led process, though. Once the connection is made between the mentor and the mentee. And then obviously shadowing, helping the person understand, what's going on in the meetings, the meeting agenda, any terms that we might be using that kind of fly over the head of new trustees sometimes. And then, talk about any community engagement activities that we might be doing or beneficial to the person. Along with any of these projects, it's always a good idea to establish check-ins for evaluation of how things are going. So we would do a 3 and 6 month, and then all the mentors and mentees would do an annual check-in as well. The forms for those have been developed and are there for your consideration and review. This is a learning process for us all, so what we have here today doesn't necessarily have to be the final version of anything. We can say, yeah, let's start with this, and then we can evolve it as we move forward. This is an ideal time as we have 2 new board members that have been appointed. We have 4 members, 2 reappointments. Ms. Howell has been reappointed and Ms. Danetta Carter's been reappointed, but we also have 2 new members, Mr. Jesus Salas and Mr. Daniel Lambert. Obviously, Mr. Salas is aware of our board and has been involved with our board in various capacities as he's retired from ABLE, but he's also on our Inclusion Council. Mr. Daniel Lambert came to us via Wood County as he was previously a resident of Wood County and on the Wood County Advocates Board, where he served as president of that board for a time, and then moved to Lucas County and expressed interest. Great pickups, all of them, and so we have a good wealth of information, or good wealth of new board members coming in, but they could always benefit from just kind of getting to know the way we operate our organization. So I'll stop there. Observations, questions?
Is it voluntary for new trustees as well?
Absolutely, yeah. You can't force a mentorship. But I'll tell you, when I was first hired, The state association has a mentorship program as well, and I was matched with the director of Cleveland, and I found that experience invaluable. I mean, it just, and that program is very successful and is kind of modeled after that.
I think that we need to at least think through the open meetings aspects of this, that they shouldn't be discussing or deliberating over substantive matters. Even if it's only two, I think there might be some implications there.
I couldn't hear you. I saw your mouth moving.
Open Meetings Act, all of our deliberations are required to be in public. And if two members sit and deliberate or talk about a substantive issue, I'm not 100% convinced that it's not a violation of the Open Meetings Act.
Percentage.
I thought it was a percentage though.
But your point's well taken then.
Yeah, I mean,
How about if we do
why
this?
run the risk? That's not the point of the mentorship. That is supposed to be procedural, cultural, not substantive.
How about if we do this as well? I have not sent this through the prosecutor's office for any feedback on how we might avoid that situation.
I think all you have to do is add a sentence or two to, you shouldn't be doing that.
That's a great idea.
I still have the program for sure.
I think this is gonna be an incredible tool for onboarding. Back when I got on the board, Calvin and I had each other. And when either one of us had a question, we'd open up our books, we would, stay after a little bit and chat. And that helped me so much because of Calvin's experience of the inner workings of the county and the city and why do we have to do this? And why do we have to do this? And then I bugged Scott a lot. Scott, what is this acronym? What's that acronym? And I got to the point where I would stop in the meeting because I realized I wasn't the only one. So I think that this will help a lot in the integrating of new members coming on board and feeling confident and whatnot. And I think in the past, we've heard, we've gotten different types of feedback from different individuals who felt like they were lost and felt like we were rubber stamping. Well, those individuals might not have been attending the planning and oversight committee, not realizing that that's where the debate happens and then the official actions happen at the board meeting. So this will clear all that up. Just having that understanding alone at the beginning would be, I think, pretty powerful and empowering.
After all, it is definitely.
My question would be rational for 6 months. I mean, that to me seems like a long time, right?
I think 6 months is a perfect amount of time. It probably took me that
Mine was a
long
year.
just to
Yeah,
get, just to get used to the acronyms and the process.
I knew somebody was gonna say that.
And you always have the opportunity to extend it, which in my case, I did, but it was more informally. And then I just finished my mentoring of somebody where we're still communicating 15 months later.
Well, my question, I guess, would be from a selfish perspective, because if I wanted to volunteer to be a mentor, 6 months of my time in addition to what I'm doing is just a lot of time.
That's a fair point.
All right, thank you.
This is great form.
Any other discussion? All right, human resource policy.
Okay, let's look at your first 16 human resource policies. And I say it that way because there's actually, I think, 31 or 32. I'm kind of gonna do this backwards a bit because I'm looking at items 6 through 16 on page 13 and just saying we changed the board to MHRSB and updated titles. There aren't any other suggestions. And just as a reminder, our last go around through these policies, we broke these policies down, in 22 very, very directly. They were vetted all at that time. They were all vetted through county human resources, and several of them actually made it into the prosecutor's office as well. We did not do that this time, given that we did it the last time. Now, obviously, some things change from time to time, but I'm not aware of any major changes that would have caused that to be the case. Nonetheless, affirmative action program, I'm just gonna go through the first 5. They were my observations, and always willing to take feedback on these. And so let's think about, we changed, all of these, we changed board to MHRSB. I'm not gonna say that again for any of the other ones. We updated language related to disabilities, and when I say that, you can read what we put there. Women, minorities, and the disabled to person first language, individuals with disabilities. And then we also updated the actual process that is occurring now for trustee applicants to make it, I guess, clearer on how that occurs. Both of our appointing authorities have taken a little bit more initiative with their appointments, and so we are lucky enough to coordinate with them, but we do not lead that process officially. I will stop there on affirmative action. Any questions?
Just procedurally, is there a separate definition section that would, for example, define appointing authority? In other words, you've got to capitalize, which would
Appointing
indicate.
authority is Ohio Revised Code 340, but
I know.
I don't have a separate definition for any of these policies in most cases.
I mean, it's a matter of drafting. If you're going to capitalize something, it means it's been defined somewhere, typically.
Okay, do you want me to cite that? I mean, I can do that. It's defined in Ohio Revised Code.
That'd be fine. I mean, you just say as defined, because it may change. They change their name. I mean, that would be
If you
fine.
just put appointing authorities as defined in Ohio Revised Code, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
As opposed to
No
appropriate.
Well, no, appropriate, because that's how we will coordinate. We will coordinate with them as appropriate.
So just add after that.
So after that,
Yes.
put that,
No, you can just put it after appointing authorities, whatever your citation
Or,
is, parenthetically or. Yeah.
cool.
I don't know right now, but it's probably 340, ORC 340, maybe 0.02.
That's pretty good.
Tell me I'm.
That's really good.
Somebody Google it.
Under recruitment, the only concern we have are minorities, women. None of the other classes are.
And the reason I put it that way is because that's what's referenced in the Ohio Revised Code that we're supposed to pay attention to. Gender and race and individuals are required. So. Okay, so there's that one. Then we have the alcohol and drug-free workplace policy. Clarified who can search property. Clarifies process for notifying supervisor, executive director regarding criminal charges and convictions.
I'm sorry, could we go back to the recruitment?
Absolutely.
My only concern is we also have employees in there. A diverse group of board trustees and so there's so many other protected classes. I'm just a little concerned if you say we're gonna recruit in these protected classes. Sort of the implication is that we're not gonna necessarily recruit. Not that, you know,
I know what you mean. I get what you're saying.
Should we eliminate the word employees?
and I'm just concerned about the employee part.
So only the red is what I changed.
Yeah, well, that doesn't mean that the
Yeah,
other,
I
then the other doesn't need to be.
I
Dave-
totally agree.
You hear what my concern is? Does that make any sense? Dave?
He's actually.
Yeah, I wanna see what 340.12 says.
Says, okay,
Because if it includes employees, then we're fine.
yeah.
It won't. 340 will not include employees.
Yeah, I think our obligations with employees may be a little different than perhaps statutory requirements about board members.
Okay, so let me do this. Let me pull this one. We're gonna have a meeting in August anyway.
Yeah,
I'll pull
okay.
this
All
one.
right,
And that'll give me time to work with county personnel to clarify and separate out recruitment of trustees versus employees.
right.
Okay.
Works for me. And it may be a non-issue.
It's worth looking into.
It's fine.
Says, each board, community, shall have a written affirmative action program. The affirmative action program shall include goals for the employment and effective utilization of, including contracts with members of economically disadvantaged groups, et cetera, et cetera. Take a look at it, Scott. I'm not sure it doesn't include employees.
When I was referencing that, I was referencing it as it doesn't require us to recruit board or employees based on race and gender as there is a statute in Ohio Revised Code related to that for our board. That was my reference. So we can go ahead and take a look at that. We'll pull that off so it won't appear, which is fine, and we can do some more work on that.
And then all of them deal with employees and trustees. I guess the other's probably promotion and recognition. That has all of the protected classes.
Yes, and that was a selection and promotion,
Yeah, those have all the other.
right, and that was a long drawn out discussion, if you recall the last time.
Yeah, so my concern is if you're recruiting and your recruitment pool is not as diverse in all these categories as selection, I mean, it's kind of hard to select. You're gonna think about it, so.
Well, it says a good faith effort to do that.
Which one are you looking at now?
Are you talking about the affirmative action? Yeah, the second paragraph, the first line. Funded agencies demonstrate a good faith effort to attract and retain diverse
Yeah.
workforce.
With the goal, yeah, that's limited to race and gender without looking at disability, pregnancy, marital status, age, or national origin. So it's the same thing we talked about before, you know, that's off the point.
No, you're fine. But I was just pondering how I recruit. I'm just wondering how that conversation goes when I'm recruiting those other entities.
Well, you can't have a conversation
Exactly.
about that,
Right.
but, you know, yeah.
Let me do some more work with county personnel on that,
Yeah.
and we'll get back to you.
Yeah.
I think
Because don't they
that's,
have that same policy? County?
they have a policy.
Is that the same as this?
I don't think it's the same as this though. Okay,
I think, to me, it's like if the selection is where the meat is, not necessarily in the recruitment. You can try and go out there and recruit, but when it comes down to actually selecting that person.
But the problem is if you don't have the classes in the pool from which you're going to select, that makes it very easy to have a very non-diverse group because you recruit
Oh,
in a
I
fashion
see.
that you only have white males
I see
under
where you're
the
coming
age of 40.
There you
And so then you select from that same pool. That's why recruitment.
Got it. I'm with you.
Which is why we
Right.
go through great efforts to do
Right.
recruitment.
Right. Or you get, well, we weren't able to find anybody of those genders and race that fit all of the qualifications that we need, and we tried really hard, so, oh well.
I would be really careful in this political environment though, of being too aggressive about that. I mean, the last thing we want is any of this flagged
Right.
for review at another level. And any kind of lawsuit, I mean, I know what you're saying and I appreciate that 100%. I am just be really careful about putting these stuff in writing that can easily be flagged by
Well,
people that are aggressive about it.
we're not, the hot button obviously is DEI, and we're not really.
But we are saying that, if we're saying that we're
We're
going
not
to
using
recruit
DEI.
specifically for all of these different things, that's gonna be, they'll be
That's
targeted
exactly that.
immediately.
Yeah.
You'll be targeted immediately.
I'm not saying we okay,
What
that's,
else can you do?
you're gonna look.
But I think there's two different things. I mean, you've got equal opportunity for minority, I mean, you're saying two different things. You're gonna provide equal opportunity for minorities and women. I think you're kosher there. And then you're also saying, but you won't discriminate based on all of these other issues. Those are very two different things. You know what I mean? You're not saying we'll provide equal opportunities for race, gender, sexual orientation, all of these different things. You're saying women and minorities. But you're gonna say, once we get them in, we will not discriminate against, we will not exclude them from promotion or from all these other things. Those are literally two different things. And you can, again, talk to, the county, but those are two very different things. And again, I would just caution you to not be I think it's a wrong policy. You guys know how I think and believe, but I also know how this administration is, and we're watching it happen in real time. And the last thing I would want to do is put a target on this board's back, because it's a really, really, really rough political climate right now.
Because really, if you think about it, by having the word minority in there, everything that's basically not white men can fall underneath minority,
Exactly, you're right.
because it is.
It is, you're right. You're absolutely right.
The 340.12 requires you to have an affirmative action plan that both prevents discrimination in the provision of services and requires you to take into account economically disadvantaged groups in your hiring. And it says employment, so I presume that's what they mean. But if you go to the definition of that, it's blacks or African Americans, American Indians, Hispanics, or Latinos and Asians. That's in a separate part of the code. So I think if we say we're required to do this by statute, I think that pretty much, if we focus on this is what we're required to do by statute and here's how we're going to implement it, I think we're fine.
So then that means the political actors will, if they don't like it, they'll check the statute.
Yeah, it would be smart when it happens.
Well, it's been in effect since 2017, so maybe they'll overlook it.
Yeah, they won't
Maybe,
find it.
yeah, maybe.
You never know.
I don't know, they just passed Senate Bill 1, which just eliminated all kinds of DEI everywhere.
We are.
Yeah, interesting.
More work to come on that.
Yes.
So let's go to number 2. The alcohol and drug-free workplace policy, I started to talk about that, clarified who could search the property because it was vague. Clarified that that would be me or my designee. Also clarified the process for notifying the supervisor regarding the criminal charges and convictions. Before, it appeared that you could do one or the other. You didn't have to do both. So I wanted to clarify that, hey, if there's a charge, you need to tell us, and when there's a conviction, you need to tell us as well. Those were the notable changes on the workplace, alcohol and drug-free workplace policy.
I say this because dealing with a client recently, that was one of the things that we were dealing with was medical marijuana cards versus, and then marijuana, THC in general, which is no longer legal, but goes against the grain of their mission goals and objectives.
So we started to address that the last time we put this together.
Some of the languages I've been seeing is intoxicating, impairment to ability to execute their work.
So here's what we said. The second paragraph of that policy says, for the purposes of this policy, individuals using tetrahydrocannabinoid, THC, must do so in strict compliance with Ohio law, or will be considered in violation of that policy. So we've already addressed your concern. Essentially, treating it like alcohol.
Do we have anything elsewhere in our policy that requires that employees comply with federal, state, and local laws at all times? In blah, 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 blah.
Well, you're asking a very generalized question for 117 policies. Let's start there. But
Well,
my initial response is yes.
So that means we're sort of creating a conflict because we're taking out you can comply with Ohio law, but you're not going to be in compliance with federal law. And so
I see the conflict, yes.
I mean, federal law is still there, so.
Federal law, I guess, we do receive federal funding as a pass-through.
As a pass-through.
So federal law would be.
And if any of our monies require that people, that our employees comply with federal law, then.
Well, essentially, all of our funding has assurance statements that are passed through to us related to will be in compliance with federal law. Any federal block grant.
I don't know, so maybe the prosecutors ought to look at that half on it for us, because federal law is not changed. What people do in their own personal time is something different than what they're doing when they're being paid by the board to do board work. I don't know.
Happy to evolve or devolve this policy to where you would like it to be,
Well,
because it has, that statement didn't change.
yeah, so maybe the prosecutors.
No problem.
Yeah, I would like to have additional.
So then we've got a fallback position. Well, let's go to number 3.
I don't wanna.
Oh, go on. You can do it. Come on.
I think some of our grants or some of the money that we get from various funders probably requires us to have some kind of policy like this. And,
It's a federal assurance statement, it's a state assurance statement, we have to have an alcohol and drug-free workplace policy. Yeah, and we have one now, they want us to look at it.
I think David's point is that I'm not sure that our policy would comply with what the feds want.
Right. Or they were drug-free.
Well, if they don't include alcohol, that ship has sailed. So, another set of eyes, not a problem. All right, so let's try number 3. Edit process, by the way, you notice how I set these up, right? There were 5 that I knew was going to have conversation, and another 10 that we knew were not gonna have any conversation.
And these are the ones that aren't gonna have the conversation
These
or
are the
that
ones that
are?
having
Oh,
conversation.
okay.
Right.
Okay.
Because,
So we're on track.
yeah, you're on track. We don't have the capacity to have vet 16 policies that all have
Conversation.
conversation, right? So don't worry about any of this. Added process for notification of allegations of harassment are reported against trustees.
Oh, my.
So if you look at the policy, there wasn't a process that if the allegation was alleged to a trustee, what should occur. It just kind of went, I guess in limbo to me, right? Which is a very awkward place for me to be, given you're my bosses collectively. So adding a procedure on what should happen next was my thought behind that. And then obviously, that guidance will be, considered probably through the lens of the prosecutor more so than anybody else. But mind you, this board does not have the ability to remove somebody. You do not have your own ability to remove somebody, so.
Prosecutor's office.
No, that is the appointing authority.
Oh, so the county commissioners, we'd have to go to them and share the story with them, so
Or
it
just
becomes, either way, it's very public.
Who would share that?
There's gotta be an investigation or something first. Where
Yeah, there's-
are we looking?
We're actually on item 4, page 22. Yeah, I mean, we're jumping the gun here, right, on who we would do and all that. I would just bring that out as a item. There's one thing that an employee does it, or allegations of employee harassment. That's a whole different thing when it's a trustee. If it's a trustee.
Your intent, when you say complaint against any trustee made by any party, that it could be an outside party, it could be, my secretary, for example? Right, well, that's what it says. It says by any party.
Well, I mean, but this is our policy, so I don't have any
Yeah.
statutory authority over that.
Yeah, so you should probably say by any employee, trustee or
It should be better defined.
whoever
I
the
would
party.
circle that in.
I would say by any employee, any other trustee. It has to be somebody who's connected to the agency.
We wouldn't want Dave's secretary.
Okay,
Well,
so
Right, I mean, it might become public, right? And then you'd say, well, is that within our policy or not?
right. So then you contact the county personnel department who has no authority over a trustee.
No,
They're gonna do the investigation.
their authority is legal guidance to this board.
The personnel board or the prosecutor's office?
Prosecutor's office.
Right, but I think her point is the personnel
The
board.
county
How does the
personnel.
personnel board fit into this is our question.
That would be my go-to on is this harassment or not. They help us define what that looks like. Well, I've not had that with the trustee, I've not had it with,
But
But-
you're trying to make policy for that, so.
I think they're
Look,
charged,
I don't know if
they're
the,
charged with doing the impartial investigation, correct?
yes.
So.
Well, let me, my experience in other departments has shown that's a combo. That the prosecutor's office, the county personnel would do it. But they lean on the prosecutor's office for guidance as well. That's what I've seen.
So the prosecutor's office is more interpretive of the law as opposed to executing the law.
I don't know if I'd go that far.
Well, I guess I'm confused as to
That was the
why,
question, I guess.
why the county personnel department is involving the prosecutor's office in an impartial investigation into an
Well-
allegation of harassment.
I would see that as providing them guidance. They're not, first of all, well, you know this, so I won't say that. It's not a criminal or civil. It's a, what does the board process need to look like?
Right.
And the county personnel is going to be able to look at what harassment is. I mean, they have a lot of experience with that. What they don't have is experience related to the statutory requirements of this board.
And then they make after the impartial investigation, they make a recommendation. To whom?
They would probably provide guidance to, I would assume, to the chair, because they don't need to provide it to me. Because I'm not your supervisors, and neither is the chair. But the chair needs to have the ultimate authority to, well, I probably shouldn't say it that way. The chair needs to provide guidance on what the next step should be, what's reasonable.
do you want to put that in here, that if there's a, what the chair should do, should go to the appointing authority?
Yeah, I think that's a good idea, because frankly, I really, other than managing the communication, I really shouldn't be in the middle of that.
So you say, we've got this, allegation against the trustee, you say it to the county personnel board or department, and they bring in the prosecutor's office. At that point, if there's a finding of, culpability, what happens? That was, I think that next step needs to be spelled out a little bit in your office.
Well, I think what the report should go to the chair.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Well, the next sentence says, what disciplinary action should be taken? That doesn't directly apply to the trustees.
That's not.
Right. So let's just add a sentence or two that says, if there's a determination that harassment has occurred, the chair will contact the appointing authority of that trustee. I mean, I think that's all you have to say, don't you, Nima?
Well, it's my experience that the entity, I mean, whenever I've been involved in an investigation, we made recommendations to the client. The client then had the sole authority to decide whether they accepted those recommendations and what they did with them. That wasn't our authority. We did, and as you said, it's only the appointing authority that ultimately has the authority to take any action.
against a trustee.
Chair should simply present the findings to the appointing authority and say, tell us what to do.
Well, not tell us what to do, you decide what you're gonna do. And it's, it's just turning, I would think it's just simply turning over the recommendation. The finding and the recommendation.
The function of the chair would simply be ministerial, to take the findings from the prosecutor's office, transmit them to the appointing authority.
Yeah, but is it coming from the county personnel department or from the prosecutor's office?
My experience, it comes from the county personnel.
Yeah, so I'm a little troubled by the Lucas County Prosecutor's Office being involved in an investigation against a volunteer board member and making findings.
Who else would you have there?
The county personnel department, or, there's something about, that's a law enforcement, that's like,
I feel you. I feel like what would happen is, I'm just putting myself in a situation and walking through it in my brain and saying, if I read this, it would be very intimidating to have the prosecutors, because I think of like television prosecutors. You know what I mean? I think of TV shows and how intimidating that is.
Now, see, now I look at that entirely different. I look at that as, hey, John, tell me what I should do with this.
Somebody has to
Remember,
interpret.
the prosecutor's office is bifurcated. We're only dealing with the civil side. We never know.
Yeah. Now, they might refer us over to that side if there's a
So
situation.
eventually, could the prosecutor's office get it anyway? If there was any,
Yeah, but they wouldn't be getting
They wouldn't get it from
Scott
us, right,
or
right,
from
they
the
get it
county
from us.
personnel.
so you're saying that?
Well,
So let me just, we could take that out of there, and that's fine. Because if there is a question, county personnel is gonna contact them anyway.
I say take it out, but that's just,
That's fine, because
I just think it's intimidating and troubling.
Well, I mean,
No, I'm saying,
but you would be surprised how often people are
Did you hear what he
accused of
said?
things that
Did you-
they have not done.
Did you hear what he said?
Yeah, I did. I'm gonna have to order one.
The reality is, it's not for people, the concern is not people who have done something. The concern is people who have not done anything, who then cannot get back their reputation and their status after the accusation in and of itself has been made. And,
We can make those changes. I think it's fair enough that we take out the prosecutors, because that can happen behind the scenes. We don't control who the county personnel department talks to. And then
and it should be confidential, impartial, confidential, because allegations are just allegations, and until they've been substantiated, and, you want confidentiality.
So are you suggesting to add that into that? Because I can tell you that I won't be able to tell, and I'm taking us down a rabbit hole now. I won't be able to tell the county personnel department to keep this confidential if they find something that they need to talk to somebody else about. And that includes the county prosecutor's office and risk management.
Well, I'll let you handle it.
Yeah. There's nothing confidential about it.
Short of setting up a internal process where we hire somebody outside to do that. definitely be, right, I mean, I would take it out of my discretionary account, so there wouldn't be a public discussion about it, and what the report would be publicly available once it hits our, yeah, it would be.
If it's a report back to the board, it's gotta be published.
which is maybe why it should come back next year. I don't know, I would,
It wouldn't matter, let me write, we are in a public meeting, so.
Yeah,
if-
yeah.
If it hits, no matter who it hits here.
Yeah.
It would be a public item.
no, I'm talking about their, report.
So they could send directly to their appointing authority, which still is a public document.
Yeah, no matter how we look at this, it's a public document.
Yeah, but it's not our public document.
Oh.
Because we're not appointing, we're,
I would be very happy to go.
yeah,
You guys go ahead and do that.
I don't know.
When it comes to trustees, it's just a whole
What
different
are the other boards that have appointments made that are public boards doing about trustees? Honestly, this is the first time I've ever seen, because typically trustees don't have that kind of access and interaction to staff to be, doing something that would channel back through the organization as opposed to whatever your general policy is. Let's say a mail provider comes in and is harassing the person that they're delivering the packages to. That would be covered under an employee should be able to complain about that kind of harassment, and that should be handled. So I don't know, maybe
Yeah, is this,
something specific
this
for a
towards-
trustee.
yeah, is this for trustee, upon trustee harassment, or is it?
In my opinion, when I was adding this, I was not just thinking about trustee, I was thinking trustee employee and trustee contractor provider. You have influence over those folks as well.
Oh my God.
Wow, okay. So if the ultimate decision, and I'm putting this out there as a question mark, if the ultimate decision is the appointee, the appointer of the appointee, they are assuming all responsibility for that person being appointed to in their representation. So the report technically should go to them, as well as to me, the complaint should just go to them. And they implement their process. Am I wrong?
How's that person gonna know that? How is that entity gonna know that, though?
If they
I mean, if that occurs, how is a vendor or gonna know who appointed you and who to go to for that
they would
the complaint?
They would report it to Scott.
Right, that's how it's written, is it would go to the
That
executive
Scott
director.
is sending it to the county personnel through the board, as opposed to turning it over to the appointing authority, which is what Sen is suggesting.
Right, I'm suggesting Scott would go to the appointing authority and say, this is the complaint I got against an appointee.
Goes to the prosecutor for
Yeah,
review.
well,
Some of them would go to the county, I mean, it's still go, some of them would still go to the county.
Yeah, some of them would still go to the county and whatnot, but
One comment I want to add, it's not in that area, this is definitely great. But also, a real life scenario was, that I had recently was exclusionary actions by a person in authority. Was that form of harassment or is that a form of workplace violence? Because we've had managers, supervisors deliberately excluding an employee from providing information to that employee to properly report, do their duties and responsibilities.
I don't know, I don't think it's in the violence category,
I mean,
but it would be.
defined as a form of psychological harassment by excluding that person, but
Personal harassment includes intimidation, humiliation, insult, or ridicule.
would that be ridicule as opposed to just
I
withholding of information?
Humiliated by cutting them out of something, I think so.
I mean, yeah, I mean,
I think it's language is
We're
broad enough to cover.
But this is why we have these conversations. So, you know, I'm entirely comfortable with having these conversations because these play out over time and it helps us understand how to write procedure and how to write policy. And by the way, this is procedure, so I can change it without changing the policy. So it also gives me a glimpse into recommendations that may or may not even be associated with this, like adding stuff into our contract and other things that has this ripple effect. So these are great conversations, and I'm entirely fine if we go 0 for 5 on these because they're important matters that need to be considered.
Does the board provide E&O coverage
yeah.
for us?
Yeah.
Is that not something that?
We have our liability.
Well, I'm talking about officers and directors, yeah.
I'll have to check on exactly, we've had this question before and I'm not recalling the exact answer to that.
I just remember we were all coming over another situation.
Let us know if we don't have insurance tomorrow.
Yeah, I'm sure we do. Oh,
Yeah.
Well, I know there's statutory and coverage for volunteers.
My question back to everybody is, what are our thoughts regarding Scott going directly to the appointer? I'm sorry.
That's sort of where we are, is once there's a complaint and Scott becomes aware of it because an employee or a trustee comes to him and says something, what does he do with it, right? And I think it makes sense to say he presents that to the appointing authority of the trustee who's been accused. But I'm not sure that's right. I wonder if maybe this is something you could just talk to John Burrell about informally. Because I don't know if there's any reason why they would insist that we go to the county.
The only
I mean,
issue I might have with that is we have a different working relationship with the county.
well, and they're also the appointing authority for a bunch of us, right? I mean, they are the appointing authority, the county is.
Let's say let's take it out of the county because I don't want to get a phone call from anybody. Let's say the state decides not to even look at it.
That's their right to decide not to look at it.
Yeah, but it's our liability.
Liability for what?
Whoever is alleging the grievance. I mean,
Yeah.
there's some potential there if we don't take action. If the action is just, well, we'll let the state handle it and they do nothing.
But you have no authority to do anything ultimately with a trustee, I thought. You can't remove the trustee.
No, but I can take actions to, well, let's say you can take actions to protect or to mitigate.
exposure to the individual or to the harassment or the wrongful behavior.
Alleged.
Well,
So,
but you can't take actions unless there's in fact inappropriate, you shouldn't be taking actions unless there's inappropriate behavior after following an investigation and a finding. But if you're not, you know,
But I think what's being raised here is that there may be remedies other than removal from the board. Just because we can, you know, whatever you want to say, without the appointing authority, we can't remove somebody from the board. There may be other remedies that should. I'm not sure what they are.
I think that's a good point, but Scott's saying it outside. It's a couple of board chairs or that. Continue that process.
That's true too.
I like that idea a lot better.
what's that?
The complaint goes to the board chair.
Rather than Scott.
Who does what with it?
To continue that process.
As a
To do
practical
what?
matter, an employee is gonna come to Scott first,
Continue the
and then
process.
Scott's gonna take it to the board chair.
Take the responsibility of the board chair. Because that would put Scott in a precarious.
Yeah, and so then what's the board chair?
They're responsible.
What am I gonna do with it?
Yes.
That's what I want to know.
That's my question. Then what?
Then to pass it on.
So let's bring it down to the real question. And then
Then you pass it on
to,
that's what we're discussing.
That's the appointing authority.
And my point is.
I think it should go to the appointing
It should not
authority.
originate with Scott.
I think it should go to the appointing
Sounds
authority,
like
and the
a lot
question to the appointing authority would be, what is your policy and procedure for investigating? Would you, you know, and then a conversation between the appointing authority and the board chair would be, we could take it to the county, we could take it this route, we could take it that route, but this needs to be addressed.
Well, I think that should happen before you put in a policy, you wouldn't do that at the time, I mean. you
yeah,
know,
people
I mean,
need,
Yeah,
and the trustee has a right to know
what's
what's gonna happen
Right.
in advance, really, of even accepting an appointment. For that matter, filing an application.
Can we find out what those policies are for each appointing, each authority? I mean, what is the?
Oh, could we make a general statement that says something like the appointing authority of that trustee would be contacted?
Final determination.
I can contact both of the appointing authorities and ask the question about.
Yeah.
I believe one will likely have a policy and the other will not.
Right, and so that's not what we want. So, I mean, it might be that we go to the county, and we have to go to the county, regardless of what appointing authority made the appointment.
So the board chair would go to the county
Personnel department.
personnel department and the appointing authority. I mean, there's no reason to not.
Well, no, I wouldn't until you get a recommendation back from the county, right? The county might be able to do something with it without going to, the only reason the appointing authority is necessary is if we want to remove them, really, right?
So if something is substantiated.
Yeah.
Then the
Then you
appointing
have to.
authority would be
If
contacted.
there's some other way to mitigate it, like we're talking about, then that they might recommend to the board, this is the action you take. You don't have to remove the board member, then why do you have to let the appointing authority know?
Well, because if the allegation was made against me, I would probably want to pick up the phone and let my appointing authority know. So would that be like a personal decision is what you're saying? I mean, for me, I think that
See, now I would think the appointing authority is gonna wanna know from me. They're gonna wanna hear it first. But we clearly are not on the same page with this
So
policy.
you think we'll if it was a state appointment, you
Almost
think,
guaranteed.
really, interesting, okay.
so I was thinking,
As bad news doesn't get better with age. And even if it's just an investigation,
They would wanna,
allocation, because you don't know what the next conversation is being had. And so they're gonna wanna prep work. And that is my experience of working with them now for 30-some years. But what I think we should do is, I think we need to add this to the list of conversations. I think it's a really good idea to check with those two appointing authorities.
And other boards and find out how they're addressing it. If they're addressing it.
My guess is they're not, but I think it's a great conversation, and so we're gonna pull this one off the list as well, and it will not appear in August. 0 for 3, board property. So Nima, you asked the question the last time we reviewed policies around MIS or HMI, around computers. Is there any other policy that applies? And at that point I said yes, but I couldn't name it. And the board property policy applied, but we tweaked it to reference some of your concerns that were stated. And I said Nima, but I know everybody had the concerns. I apologize for that.
That's okay.
I didn't mean to call you out, but we're calling you out anyway.
Okay. No worries.
So we added some language around allowing for personal use on a limited basis, provided the use does not violate any of the following. Limited to employee use only, so now you can no longer let the kids play Tetris on it or whatever. Limited scope that does not contribute to the premature failure of the equipment, meaning you're not mining for, Bitcoin or something, and it's offline, right? And isn't used for political use, commercial or for-profit use, that was also referenced, and consistent with any other policy that we have. That gets us to, I think, a comfortability that, we're at least making the statement, and while I can't control that, what you do in the off time, we have some guidelines here that are attached to policy. Yes, ma'am?
So I don't want to go over things, but when we're doing all the stuff with the flags, isn't that political?
It is not
It's not
considered,
considered.
and we are statutorily allowed to use
Okay,
board resources to further our levy. We're the only system that is allowed to do that in the state of Ohio.
okay, that's why I just wanted to make sure to see. Okay.
Any other questions? All right, so we're good with that one. We will move on.
You might get a couple more.
Crisis Emergency Management Plan, updated the safety protocol for this building, and incorporated remote work potential into the policy. So essentially it says if this building closed, the current policy is let's say the water gets shut off during the middle of the day. Current policy would be, we're done for the day, go home. But we all have remote work capability now, so that doesn't make sense to go home and have an off day. You go home and work. Same with inclement weather, closing during the middle of the day. Now, that also, there's some nuances to inclement weather in particular, but any early release from work will just basically say, okay, I'm gonna let you go home because the roads are gonna get bad. But I expect you, when you go home, everybody has a capability, everybody here. So,
Along those same lines, this is something that is newer, obviously, since we all figured out how to work remotely, but if I know on Tuesday that Wednesday we're having a snowstorm and there's a good chance they'll that the roads will be shut down Wednesday and Thursday, or it could be shut down, it could be a level 2 snow. My question is there a statement in here, I didn't see it, that states that it is my responsibility to take my equipment home to be able to do my job the next day?
I don't know if that's, well, you said it, so it's not in here.
I just think that might be a good thing to have in there, so that people understand that if there's a kind of weather coming because of this mobile equipment and the investment, the investment we made for them to have that equipment so that they could work from home.
Does that need to be in there, or is that something that Scott could address?
Well, guys, when the weather starts to get bad, we have these conversations constantly. So, I mean, I could add a statement into the beginning, under weather related. It's
Yeah.
totally appropriate for staff to be prepared to work remotely. When
Just something
when weather forecast suggests there might be a weather related closure. I mean, that's
something along
fine.
those lines. Right. Exactly.
And we have a bunch of professional employees here, folks, so they're taking their laptops home anyway, most times. So, I mean, but we can interject that
It's
in.
always for that exception.
Well, there is, but now what, right? I mean, that's the real question, is now what? So I forgot my laptop, now what? So, by the way, you don't need your laptop to work remotely. You can, everything's up in the cloud now, so you can just go on any computer and log into SharePoint, and it's just like sitting in your office.
Some really significant risks if people are using their personal computers to do office work.
Everything is, yeah, when you log in, it's all password protected. You're logging into a website like you're logging in here.
I understand.
There's no real difference. It's Microsoft security. It's not, it's not we're not relying on your home computer security. So how's that?
Because if there's a dispute or something happens and the other side's gonna ask for discovery for a printout, a download of all that's on that computer. And there may be things on there that shouldn't be. And now that's associated with us.
I don't
Do they
say
store
that.
things on there?
No, nothing is stored on, first of all, I believe David's referencing their own
Right.
personal computer. Right, yes.
If they don't have the laptop, an unanticipated emergency, they can't come to the office, but they didn't take their laptop home. Do we want to let them use their home computer?
So if what they're doing is tapping into a bank of information and nothing, and it's simply the mechanism that tap into, they're not keeping anything on their computer. There is nothing for them, if they take that computer and wanna, do whatever the forensics on it, there's not gonna be anything on that computer. Is there the?
You're asking me something, that's beyond my
So that's the
technical.
question, so if there's,
It may very well be that we can cabin what they can do, that they can't use their personal computer except to remote in on a secure line. They shouldn't be doing work on their home computer. They shouldn't be writing an important memo on their home computer and then think, well, I'll just put it on the cloud later. Right? And I think a couple of sentences in this policy that says, if you, because of whatever, you need to work at home and you don't have your office equipment, you can work at home on your own equipment as long as you do the following. And Spinelli can tell us exactly what that is.
Saved to OnePoint or SharePoint.
Yeah.
Or OneDrive or SharePoint. Yeah, I mean, you won't be able to get your files without it anyway. So you can't access anything without going to SharePoint.
It's not to transfer things. So like an old Q drive.
That's good that that it's hard, yeah.
Yeah.
So questions about if you're at work and then weather's gonna get bad, so these people work 8 to 5, people at 2 to 5 may get home because the streets are bad, and 3:30, do they have to work that hour and a half, or just until 5? You know what I'm saying?
Guys, you're really starting to pick these apart, but
Yeah.
we have a lot of discretion here to allow them to flex their time as we see fit. Folks understand that they're at work 40 hours a week. So if they decided to wanted to not work until, because they're home at 3:30, as long as they pick up that hour and a half somewhere else. We don't get that bogged down in, are you picking up that next?
So this would require some revision also?
Yeah, we can revise that and we can make sure that this one gets on the Tuesday agenda.
Okay, that would be my only comment.
And all that is related to if you're going to log in on a non-board owned
That's
or
right.
leased computer, that all information created is shared, is saved on SharePoint. in the-
Siloed, it has to be siloed, and not
And not on the.
on the personal property.
So, on
Those were the 5, is that it?
Disciplinary action?
No changes related.
Okay.
I'll
Well, let's
just-
start the new ones, got
That's
it.
6 through, now if there's any that you wanna look through on this. Well, I'm fine with it, I mean, I'm not trying to, thwart any kind of conversation, it's just we made no changes other than for the MHRSB.
Without reading the family and medical leave policy, is there a clause in here that says, subject if federal law changes that we would adhere to mandates of federal,
I don't believe that there is a clause in there that says if federal law changes, will change.
similar to what we put in collective bargaining agreement, something supersedes, the super federal law will supersede something that's, if it conflicts. I don't know, I defer to the attorneys in the room, maybe.
No, that's probably a good idea.
Unless you want to fix your policy.
That would be the only reason you wouldn't do that.
But I think the understanding is that we want to comply with a minimum federal law generally, as opposed to local law. But again, I defer, just a question. I know in collective bargaining agreements, that's something that we always put in as a mandate.
Well, I mean, the practical likelihood is that the federal law changes, it ain't gonna get any better.
That's true, too. That's true, but it's not collectively bargained, so that's what I'm saying. It's not collectively bargained.
And if you do notice, just as a point of reference, this entire policy is policy. It's not a procedure. So once it's set, I can't change it.
Wow, exactly. That's federal law.
It says in accordance with federal law.
So federal law changes, then you have to look at the policy.
Does that satisfy?
Again, I defer.
Well, yeah, but we're saying we're in accordance with federal law, says we're complying with federal law. So whatever federal law is, that's right? Would you disagree with that, Nate?
Yeah, I don't think that's a strong enough.
Okay, that's fine. Okay.
one big reason.
I mean, I would read that as in accordance with current federal law, 1,250 hours, blah, 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 blah. What you get by the substance of it. I mean, my preference would be to say, these are the standards we're going to continue to apply. Federal law changes, we visit. But at a minimum, these are our standards. We can live with that.
I can add a sentence onto the back of that.
And other people may disagree. I mean, you got a choice. You can either keep it as it is now, which everybody's used to, or you can say, we'll always have the minimum federal policy. So if the federal policy is degrading, our employees will get a great policy. I'd rather
Any chance you can shoot me a statement? For the record, we're adding another attorney to this.
So, this one would be.
Great
Oh,
conversation.
yeah, we'll read all it. Yeah, we get this done.
So for today, this one,
Yeah, I'll pull the first 4 or 3, but all the others,
first 3 plus crisis emergency management.
no, crisis emergency management will make it in. We're only gonna pull
The first 3.
the first 3. We can name them by. Yeah, I mean, it's first 3, affirmative action, alcohol and drug-free workplace, and anti-harassment will be pulled. We'll just take those first 3 off, unless there's others.
All right, so any other discussion? Any further discussion on these 16 listed?
I don't know what you guys are talking about, so if you wanna ask the question.
On the family, for the FMLA, do we recognize citizens marriages?
So we have nothing to do with FMLA. The FMLA application goes to county personnel. County personnel determines, and then they tell me if that person qualifies for, and that's all I know. I don't know the disability, I don't know the reason, I don't know, all I get is a letter. I don't,
Say it again?
As it should be.
Yeah, no, not the
I-
reason, it's more the status of the individual, not the reason.
no, you're talking about in a same-sex marriage or same-sex relationship, can you take that for a minute? I can ask that question. Yes is marriage, yes. I don't know. My guess is domestic relationship, yes, if you're living in the same household, that's starting to ring a bell now.
So we provided that there was some certification that the person had. So that comes up to the council.
So that's where I see some federal law.
So the motion.
Quorum was established for days until somebody suggests the absence of the quorum, so it's fine.
Regardless, you still have a law.
So it says mental health and drug services shall include the following 16, not 16, it's 17.
Not 17 anymore.
Well, that's my point. So
Officer
that should be account.
Then what's missing off the list? Now, you got,
Is this a carryover? Record?
Yes,
Got it. Okay, good point. Good point. So it should read then, 13 human resources policies contained in the board packet effective July 1st, 2025, to include board property, crisis emergency management plan, disciplinary action, family and medical leave, health benefits, initiation, maintenance, release, and retention of information from records, intern policy, jury duty or attendance as witness, layoff, leave, donation, leave without pay, military duty / pay, and no smoking policy. That would be the motion.
Are we removing board property? Weren't you gonna do some tweaking of the language in board property?
Yeah, but I can do that and still get it done for next Tuesday.
Okay, all right.
So,
All right, it's been moved. Second. Any questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Those who abstain? That motion passes.
I don't have any changes on board property. I have it on crisis.
Well,
Yeah, the whole line house is there.
That's in the crisis emergency.
Oh, is it? Okay. Gotcha.
But it might not be a bad idea to add it.
Yeah. Just to be safe, yeah.
That's really all I had.
That's plenty.
You sure you don't have any more?
I got any more. And these were supposed to be the easy ones, just so you know.
I just remember, I had just gotten on the board when you started doing these before, and oh my word.
Yeah, it goes like this every time. Normally, just put this. Session.
Okay, now we're on open session. Richard?
Hey, turn that light on, Richard.
I believe City Council is still getting an earful. Tonight, they're hearing proposed changes to zoning laws for schools and daycares. The meeting was at 4. People started showing up at least a half an hour early, and when I left, they were still coming through the front door, and they did not look happy. It's controversial, so that's what I believe they're doing. Earlier today, they did approve Harbor will continue to be their employee assistance program provider. I believe they're going to get it up to $105,000. It was mentioned that Harbor has not raised its rate since 2021. That made the council members very happy. This would be their employee assistance for everything, for police, fire, everything. Last Thursday, the Citizens Levy Review Committee met. It went very well for Children's Services Board. This is for their 1.8 mil levy, which it's a last year of collection. They've got to pass that. And the word unsustainable was used a few times because looking at 2027, they're facing huge deficits, so they've got some tough decisions to make. But that's a recommendation from the Levy Review Committee. I was hoping the county commissioners would hear their presentation this morning. They didn't. I think that might have been because they had their public hearings on water and wastewater rate increases this morning. All the news media were there, but there were no people from the general public there. They'll have another one next Tuesday. But at some point, Levy Review has to come before them, give their presentation, and I don't see it as a big deal. And then City Council, and then county commissioners have a couple of things they need to do, but they need to do it before August and get that on the levy. And so tomorrow is the second meeting of the Children's Services, Child Welfare Task Force, whatever you want to call it. As I mentioned last week, I'm still pressuring the county commissioners when they finish all their work and they have a new plan, can they arrange for white smoke to come out of the top of the building so that everybody knows we have a new plan. There's a lot of anticipation about this. I remember in 2009 when Connecting Point closed, they were very unhappy with this board, put together a task force. Just so happens it was at the same time that the public was mad because the dog warden was euthanizing too many pit bulls. So that went on at the exact same time. The news media showed up at all those meetings, and it was usually front page of the Blade. With this board, the news media didn't show up at any of them, and when they finally reported on it, it was the back pages of the second section near the obituary column. So yeah, that takes place tomorrow. I know they are concerned that the news media comes to those. There's a great deal of anticipation. And one final thing, just for your education, tomorrow is an anniversary of something that should not be forgotten. It was June the 11th of 1955 that we had one of the worst mass shootings in the history of Toledo. This took place at Westgate, which at the point was a big parking lot. You had Farmer Jack move out and just left it, didn't maintain it, didn't provide security, anything like that. And the Bourbon Street nightclub moved in there, and on June the 11th, they had about 700 kids at 3 o'clock in the morning. Somebody pulled out a 9mm handgun and shot 8 people. One of them, Kevin Ellis, just graduated the week before that at St. Francis de Sales, had his whole life ahead of him, no gang affiliations. He was killed, 7 others injured. The community just went crazy. Remember back in 1995, you didn't have mass shootings every day, but this was one of the worst in the history of the city of Toledo. There were press conferences and finger pointing and speeches made and all that. Carty Finkrider was the mayor, Jack Ford was head of city council, and a lot of talk. But here we are today, 30 years later. Look at Westgate. You just had Big Lots move out. You just had a liquor store move out across the street. There's Elder Beerman and Sears. That's gone. So here we are, 3 decades later. We still have plenty of out-of-state landlords that aren't maintaining their properties, and we still have plenty of Toledoans that don't know where their kids are at 3 o'clock in the morning. So we still need another wake-up call. Tomorrow was the 30th anniversary. I've been mentioning it at City Council, and they say, oh, you vaguely remember that, but it should not be forgotten. So thank you.